It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and joining us to talk about a fascinating story. It's the story of Father Amorth, who was an exorcist and talks about his battle against Satan in a book out by Sophia Institute. Thank you so much for joining us, Tom Allen.
Oh, pleasure to be with you, Kyle.
So tell us a little bit about Father Amorth.
Well, he was the Vatican's chief exorcist, probably the most famous exorcist in the world for several decades. And he was an Italian priest, an exorcist in the Diocese of Rome, and he performed tens of thousands of exorcisms over his half a dozen plus decades as a priest. Yeah, he was the chief exorcist of the Vatican.
And the book has interviews that have not been previously released. Father passed away in 2016. Where did these newly released interviews come from?
There was an archive of them, and this is actually the last recorded conversations he had. Our book, which was just published, called Father Amorth: My Battle Against Satan, and it's a fascinating question and answer book, deeply engaging, very easy to read. It's kind of a page turner. The QAs are with Father Amorth and also those who were closest to him, so you get a good kind of comprehensive view of who he was as a man. And it turns out to be very disarming because you expect something totally different given the gravity of his work. But in fact, you discover in reading it that his manner of speaking is very joyful and ironic because he was a joyful man at heart, and he was even a joker by nature.
Yeah, I can't imagine what he saw and what he experienced. Does he go into detail about some of these exorcisms?
Oh, yeah, he does. He explores the reality of spiritual warfare and of diabolic activity. There's really so much. There's so much in there that's astonishing, and one reads it not for any kind of prurient interest, but to really get grounded in the reality of Satan and the role that he plays in our lives. He's the ultimate authority for a number of reasons, not just because of the experiences that he had performing tens of thousands of exorcisms, but what you learn in the book is that for 26 years, he went to confession and received spiritual direction from none other than Padre Pio.
Oh, wow.
And he reports in the book that Padre Pio was with him, present beside him, during exorcisms. How did he know that? Because the demons would tell him through the people who he was exorcising. And so, yeah, this is the level that you're dealing with when you're reading through this book. And he goes on to describe who Satan is, the obvious reasons of why we have to be careful, how we could put our armor on and protect ourselves from demonic assaults, and just kind of how prevalent it is in the world around us.
Some people fascinated with this kind of stuff. Some people terrified completely. Why do you think it's good to learn about these things and maybe even study it?
This is the world that we live in. I mean, there are. Father talks about how there are three orders of reality. There's the divine existence, then there's the preternatural world, which is the world of spirits and angels, good or bad, and then there's the natural world where we live. But human beings also participate in the preternatural. Some people are more attuned to it than others. They kind of sense things better. But the fact is that we all deal with the spiritual part of life, and some are blind to it and others are awake to it. But it's really Satan's greatest trick to fool people into thinking that he's not there, because the fact of the matter is that he is there, and we need to be aware of that.
So what makes a good exorcist? Why was Father Amorth such a renowned exorcist? Well,
he understood the adversary. He didn't fear Satan. He was a man of courage, but he was also a man of incredibly deep faith. He makes the point that remaining with Jesus makes us conquer our fears of disorder and death and even the devil himself. And he exhorts us to read the gospel and apply the gospel in our lives and act with total humility, knowing that everything depends on God. In saying all this, he was describing how he lives his life, or how he lived his life, and how that equipped him for the work that God gave him to do, which was this work as an exorcist.
Yeah. We're talking with Tom Allen and talking about the book, Father Amorth, My Battle Against Satan. And you shared a little bit about some of the amazing stories of Padre Pio being present at some of these exorcisms. What are some of the other stories that are just amazing and maybe even hard to believe?
There's a whole variety of them. The book is kind of more of who he is. It doesn't dive into tremendous detail about case study after case study.
Sure.
But he talks about things like his favorite film was The Exorcist, not surprisingly, because he thought that it substantially explained the true events. And although he said that the special effects were exaggerated, in an interview with the London Sunday Telegraph, he said that people need to know what we do. So by saying that The Exorcist, the William Peter Blatty film, was substantially correct, we get a sense for the kind of wild scenes that he was witness to and a participant in. So again, he's not into kind of fanning any prurient interest. He's more into, hey, prepare yourself, because this is the reality that we live in. And he will talk instead about, say, the different categories of diabolic activity. So he'll touch on how there's infestation, as in haunted houses, and obsession when a person is harassed by the devil, either by intense temptations or in a particular area of a person's life. And then number 3, there's oppression, which is an external act of evil spirits on a person. And then there's the rarest and most serious form, which is possession. Mm-hmm. And then he goes into the different kinds of exorcisms that he performed over the years. There's the liturgical exorcism, which is incorporated in every baptismal ceremony, which a lot of people don't realize. There's also the so-called private exorcism, which can be performed really by any faithful person in as simple a way as saying, "Begone, Satan." And then there's the more solemn, formal exorcism, which is a ritual that's only carried out with the specific authorization of a bishop. So in explaining all this, he really paints the picture of the reality that we're all walking in. And he just advises that people remain in a state of grace, because that's the ultimate antidote for all this. And just definitely to be aware that Satan is present in our world, and he does influence things, and he does influence people. And people welcome in either the spirit of light or the spirit of darkness, and then they're animated by that spirit, which they welcome inside of themselves. And I'm sure that you and many of your listeners are confounded by a lot of the insanity that is just out there in our world today. People believing the most ridiculous things, and you just wonder what that's all about. But it's being answered by people like Pope Francis and the exorcists around the world, who are saying that there has been a significant spike in demonic activity and in exorcisms for over the past number of years. So it's a reality that everyone has to be aware of.
Sure, it would be nice if we could just do an exorcism on the whole world at once and just take care of it all right off one time.
Yeah, I think the Blessed Mother was getting to that with Fatima and the consecration of Russia by all the bishops of the world, and that kind of thing, as we saw in that drama. For some reason, it just seems difficult to do. The bishops kind of don't get together in as orderly a way as we would hope. And that's another thing that Father Amorth touches on in the book, which is that there are actually many priests and bishops who do not believe in the existence of the devil or evil spells or extraordinary evils. They believe in ordinary temptation, and that's it. And so they, in a way, they deny the supernatural. And the sad reality is that they're not taught these supernatural realities in many of the seminaries. So when we look at all the problems in the episcopacy, knowing what Father Amorth reveals about that, it's small wonder, because the basics of our faith are not being taught to a lot of the shepherds of the church and priests, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, one of the things it was said, to the many he served, Father was a godsend, freeing them from years of demonic oppression. To others, he was just a crank, an extremist priest who saw the devil everywhere. Was he seeing the devil everywhere, and is that just the reality that we're maybe not acknowledging?
He didn't see the devil everywhere, but he would have meetings with the devil when he would go in and help people who were suffering from infestation, obsession, oppression, or possession. I mean, he knew it was real. I mean, there are other priests like Father Malachi Martin, the fascinating writer from the 70s and 80s, who said that he could walk down Fifth Avenue in New York City and actually see the spiritual condition of people as they were walking by. He could see those who were surrounded by angels and those who were surrounded by demons, and those who were absolutely covered in demons. So there are people and holy men who can see these things. And Father Amorth touches on how modern-day saints, like Padre Pio himself and Mother Teresa, how they fought the devil throughout their lives and won. The devil, he explained, tried to possess Mother Teresa when she was sick in the hospital one time, and he said that an Indian exorcist kept the devil at bay and protected Mother Teresa. So it's not like he saw the devil everywhere, but it was just his lot in life, his vocation, his calling to kind of stand up and fight that battle on behalf of us people.
Yeah. So fascinating, and I think a good reminder that evil is in the world and we need to be aware of it so that we can avoid it as well. So where can people get a copy of the book?
Go to sophiainstitute.com, and just you'll see Father Amorth on the homepage, or you can just put it into the search engine, Father Amorth, at www.sophiainstitute.com. And it's a terrific read, and it's also a good book to hand to someone else, a friend or loved one who's kind of lukewarm or wavering in the faith, because that's the kind of thing that could really shake people awake. I mean, sometimes people are only awakened to the reality of God and the spiritual world when there's an accident or some kind of unfortunate event befalls them. But it's a good kindness to just give someone a book like Father Amorth, My Battle Against Satan, just to show them that, hey, this is all real. The Catholic Church is built on these kind of realities, and Jesus himself, in St. John's words, appeared on earth to destroy the works of the devil. That was Jesus' mission. And so we're all kind of involved in the battle to one degree or another. And the sacraments and the Gospels and staying in a state of grace is our best defense.
Yeah. Good reminder. Fascinating story. Appreciate you so much for joining us today and sharing with us. Thanks, Tom.
My pleasure, Kyle. Take care.